Did any of you guys go on the tour, or are we still waiting for the tour?
I think that the same tours are open.
Yeah, we did.
So
We did.
y'all went on the tour.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then it's 4:30. We should get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Capital Factory. Normally, the last couple of weeks, I would say, I bet everyone's glad they're inside because of the heat. But now we have another reason to be glad we're inside, and also a reason to be glad for what's happening outside.
Right.
Rain is a welcome sight this time of year in Austin, and that hopefully is, ushering in the change of weather that we've all been desperate for. Whether you're new to Austin, just new to Capital Factory, or new to the tech ecosystem, this meetup hopefully will help point you in the right direction for whatever it is you're seeking to get out of being here in this place, in this town. And I've been around for a little while, and talking with these folks, I think will hopefully be a great resource for you. And if we're not, there are lots of really great resources that we're going to point you to. So if you have questions throughout, I actually don't mind if you stop me or us during our presentation and ask questions, but we also will have a Q&A at the end. So if you think of something and you want to ask it later, you can do that, or if you just are eager, ask it while we chat. So before you ask me questions, I want to ask you all questions. Did everybody go on the tour? Show of hands. We're going to do the fun entrepreneur raise your hand thing. Cool. What about any of you CF members, and this is like your orientation or things you want to learn about? Not yet. All right. If you're interested in being a member, I think Melissa probably gave you her card. How many of y'all have been to South by Southwest? Show of hands. Cool. It's changed a little bit since you were there. How many of you are UT Austin grads? Really?
Oh, wow.
All right.
I'll raise my hand then. I represent.
I am not. How many of you recently moved to Austin? All right. Where a few hours ago?
48 hours ago.
Oh,
Well done. Wow, you don't waste any time.
all right. Any people more recent Austin transplants? No? Okay.
Looking for an apartment.
Where did you move from?
Israel.
Oh.
Wow, welcome.
I'm jet lagged.
I bet. Well, we have cold brew coffee.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And where else are people from who recently moved?
DC.
Okay. Where else?
Nebraska.
Ooh.
wow.
All right.
Italy.
Italy?
Florida.
What part of Florida?
Tampa.
I am from Punta Gorda,
Okay.
but the locals call it Punta Gorda. Awesome.
Northwest Arkansas.
Northwest Arkansas. They have a really great ed tech scene there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget the group, but they're a part of the Ed Clusters group. They're actually called an Ed Cluster, which is not a derogatory term. All right. Anybody else?
San Francisco.
Awesome. Welcome.
Berlin.
Such an
Okay.
international group.
This is a very widespread group.
That's awesome.
Interestingly, DC, Florida, and California are the three places where more people come from and transplant into Austin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
California is the number one,
Yeah.
but it's, there's a myriad of places. I think it's actually like 6% or 10% of all transplants are from California, and then DC, Florida, and a couple of other places, Chicago.
Which is also a big change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the last time you were at South by Southwest. Anybody born in Austin? I don't think so. No. Anybody looking for a job? All right. Cool. Anybody looking to hire?
Y'all should talk.
All right. Investors. Let's do. Okay. Who is a founder of a startup? Awesome. I also co-founded a startup back in the day. No big deal. All right. Awesome. Well, here are the things that we're going to talk about today. We'll go through the Texas Startup Manifesto, the Austin history lesson, so that you can kind of learn how all of this started happening. Obviously, we're going to talk about Capital Factory. We'll talk about some of the connections that we have to UT Austin. We will be talking about South by Southwest. I will give you some insights into the Army Futures Command and what's happening on the 8th floor. Did you guys stop by the 8th floor on the tour? You only went 5th floor, 1st, 5th, and 16th?
Top secret.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
They won't let you. It is top secret.
It is not top secret.
That's what Alex told me.
And then again, yeah, you can ask me anything if you have questions. Ask us anything, really. What we will not cover in this session is fundraising. We have that on the first Tuesday of every month, and there are people who are more qualified to speak to that than I am. And then there's also a happy hour that comes with that. We will not be talking about how to become a mentor or an investor, but we do have an AMA for that. This is the second Tuesday, so this is what we are covering today. That's weird. And then the happy hour will follow tonight's our AMA.
We will
We
not
also-
go on a road trip to Dallas or Houston or San
We won't,
Antonio.
but if you guys are interested and you become a Capital Factory member, that is one of the benefits of being a member. You get early access to all those road trips that we do. And then on the fourth Tuesday, we do open pitch pizza, which is a really cool practice. Part of our program includes, part of the Capital Factory Accelerator is the Founders Essentials program that is a quarterly boot camp that's taught here at Capital Factory. And it's a week-long seminar, so if you're interested in that, you can learn more at foundersacademy.eventbrite.com. I believe that is taught by our president and our accelerator founder, Gordon Doherty. He's awesome,
And you don't yet have to be a member to do that.
oh,
right?
I don't know.
You should go to Eventbrite and find out, because I attended it when I was not yet a member, and it's super, super helpful.
Awesome. Before I go any further, why don't you both introduce yourselves so that everyone knows who we're
We're actually just audience members that sat up here.
They wanted the best seats in the house.
I'm Brooke Turner. I'm a co-founder of a startup called Quaddle Early Stage, and I'm the program director at Div Inc., a nonprofit organization that has a 12-week accelerator as one of its programs. And so I'm in the middle of that, running that program with 13 companies, down to 12 now. I had to kick one out. No hard feelings. Still love them very much. And we have an alumni program, and then we have community happy hours and events and other programs involved in that.
And I'm also with Div Inc. I'm partner and VP of development. So I do fundraising, but we are a nonprofit organization. So my job is to fundraise for Div Inc. so that we can do all the great things that we do.
Cool. And your name is?
Monica Morales.
Thank you. What did you want to add to that?
I do want to say that the way that she fundraises and prospects, if you're an early stage startup and you're looking to do angel prospecting, her process is amazing. She knows her stuff, so it still applies.
And I'm Sean Duffy, Senior Partnerships Manager for Capital Factory, and I work on all of our corporate, community, university partnerships, and basically help all this magical stuff happen here at Capital Factory. So my background is that actually I was in education, and I started a meetup group here that meets once a month, as most of our meetups do. And so I'll get to this at some point in the deck, but if you're interested in any technology domain, I highly, highly suggest you find the meetup group that talks about those things, and then just start hanging out and networking with those folks. It's a great place to find, if you're hiring, it's a great place to find people who are looking for jobs. If you're looking for a job, it's a great place to meet those folks who are hiring. And then it's just an awesome way to connect with like-minded individuals. It's literally the best way to network. And we host a ton of meetups at Capital Factory, but there are meetups happening all over the city in Austin. So definitely, as they say, find your tribe and go out and explore those communities. That's literally why I'm here, is because I started a meetup group around EdTech. So. Our other things, Gordon Doherty has an amazing book that is available for pre-sale, and it will be coming out at the end of this month, called Startup Success. If you're interested in that, startupfundraisingsuccess.com is where you can purchase it, or also at any of our front desks in a couple of weeks, because I don't think they have shipped yet. But if you haven't met Gordon Doherty, he is honestly one of the people to put on your list of folks to meet. He's one of the nicest people, and is just a wealth of information. Josh, our CEO, has a blog, and so if you want to find, I think this slide deck, and also just lots of really great information, go check out that URL that I will not read, but you can see it there. And anything Josh tweets or writes about, he's very much about connecting people and connecting startups to all of the resources that they need to scale and grow. So definitely do that. I would also check out our weekly events page and sign up for our weekly email. There are, like I said, lots of meetups. I think it's like 80 meetups a month meet here at Capital Factory. So every night there's something different going on. And even if it's not here, sometimes we like to spread the word about other things that are going on. And then all of the events that we do, as you heard on the tour, we do like, I don't know, 1,500 events a year. So there's always something for everybody. The big things that are upcoming that you should absolutely have on your radar is Austin Startup Week. That is the 22nd through the 26th of this month. The 26th in the evening from 5 to 9 p.m. is the startup crawl. It is a who's who of everyone in the startup ecosystem. It is just like a pub crawl on steroids, and you get to kind of walk around and see all the different startups, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And that's from like other buildings around downtown, not just up and down these floors.
That is correct. Yes. All right. There is a fantastic Facebook group called Austin Startups. There is also a really awesome Facebook group called Austin Digital Jobs. Highly recommend you check out both of those, both really great resources and ways to get even more plugged into the startup community. So definitely check those out. Okay, so I think we're talking about Austin. And the reason why Austin is so hot right now, you know, there was this really cool, we thought a very cool Economist article about how Silicon Valley is just getting, you know, kind of like overrun, and people are coming to Austin to build their startups and build their companies here. And so in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about like how that all started and why now is the time. But ultimately, the biggest takeaway here is the talent is shifting, and lots of people are finding value in Austin. Property values are still, you know, affordable compared to Silicon Valley and other places. And so we're just seeing lots of big companies coming here. Apple just expanded their campus. AWS and Amazon are building, you know, big, you know, entire buildings, both downtown and then also up at the Domain. Google is actually building an entirely new building outside of the one that they just occupied like 5 or 6 floors on. I know Facebook just recently, you know, grew in their space there.
Oracle's building the new, Oracle's doing the new building, that way? And it's huge
Yeah.
too.
You mean the one across the river?
Yeah, so they're building another huge building. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's
It's
massive, massive, yeah.
That's incredible.
And they have apartments out there, it's like a whole community out there, it's amazing.
Yep. And people go and work for Oracle for a while, and then they decide, I don't want to work for Oracle. And then they come and start their startup here.
Yeah.
So it works. But yeah, that's my big takeaway is the talent is here, and that's why all these big companies are investing. And that is awesome for you guys. Unemployment in Austin is currently at about 2.7%. So it's a great time to be looking for a job in Austin. Our Texas Startup Manifesto, Austin, Capital Factory started here in 2012 in this building, but it started out of Austin Technology Incubator in 2009. And our focus has been intensely on Austin as the hub and the center of gravity for all things tech and entrepreneurship. We've expanded to Dallas. We have a new campus up there. And our strategy here is just to cover Texas and know every single startup in Texas. And that seems to be working really well. Our focus is on, you know, in competing with Silicon Valley, like we can't, no one city can ever go toe to toe with Silicon Valley. Like there's just so much investment there. They have more unicorns per capita. That's just where all of the investment activity takes place there, and then, you know, on both coasts. And so we really want to make sure that entrepreneurs in Texas have a leg up on those other cities. We don't want to be the flyover country anymore where investors are not coming to invest in startups. And so we are really, really intensely focused on Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, as well as Austin. And we've got really great partnerships with the Canon, Station Houston, TMC, and then down in San Antonio, Geekdom. So the Texas Startups Roadshow is kind of our first attempt at really, you know, making sure that we have a pipeline of mentors and investors and also startups going into those cities each month. And so once a month, we're taking a bus up to Dallas to do events and programming there, and to, you know, welcome the investor community, welcome the mentor community over to Houston. And we actually recently just did a Texas Startups Roadshow with JP Morgan Chase.
Mhm.
We're going to be doing another one right before South by, an international investor roadshow. So Berlin and Italy and Israel. You guys are all going to come on with us. It's a lot of fun, and it's just a really great way to, again, like elevate the startup game for all of Texas. Do y'all want to add to that at all? Have you been on any of those bus tours?
No, not on the bus tours. Just been to several of the locations.
Mhm.
I would definitely, whenever you're in other cities, go check out their, like, all of these places, introduce yourself, tell them Capital Factory recommended. It's interesting to see the similarities and the nuances and how they really work to know their city and to build up their city, but then collaboratively all of Central Texas. It makes me really proud when I go and talk to them. I'm like, yes, we're in this together, even though we're all, wanting to win.
Yeah. And also along those lines, I would also say that Capital Factory is cooperative, and like we collaborate all the time with other accelerators and incubator programs in Austin and throughout Texas. And so similarly with Div Inc., a lot of the companies that Div Inc. was going out and scouting and bringing in because of the diverse founders, we were also asking those folks to come and apply to our accelerator. So, and we do the same thing with Mass Challenge and Techstars and Sputnik and you name it. If there's an accelerator in Austin or in Texas, we want to work with them.
I would just add that Austin is probably one of the most collaborative cities. Then I hear that over and over again when you compare it to like the Bay Area and Boston and things. It's just everybody collaborates here, and so it's a great place to be. It's easy to meet people, and people want to help you.
Yes. Top of every list. Best places to start your startup. Some of these things we already talked about, building new campuses. The reason why the Army is here is because of the startup community, and also just how, this is where the talent is, and this is just the best place to start and grow your company. We worked with the Austin Chamber of Commerce to heavily persuade the Army to bring their Army Futures Command here. They have a group called Army Applications Lab, which is essentially like the tip of the spear, if you use the term, scouting for new technologies that can be valuable to the military. And it's not, they're not building like weapons and bullets and things on the 8th floor. They're literally looking at things like, a startup called Fit Rankings that does aggregated fitness data, that if you're in a National Guard unit, when one of the key metrics that they measure is fitness, now there's a way to systematize that and have a snapshot view of everybody in the org, whether they're using a Fitbit or a Garmin or whatever. Fit Rankings, a startup that is started out of Capital Factory. So there's things like that. They're working with New Knowledge, an AI company that can determine like the fake news or bots on Twitter. Like they're working with all these different companies, many of which you would never think like they have military applications, but the government is, it turns out, actually a really good customer for a lot of these startups. You know that they have funding, at least most of the time, and that they hopefully pay their bills on time. So a lot of startups are catching on to this. There's also a really cool program called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research. It's a grant program, and it's literally a way for the military to find small and medium-sized businesses to go and do business with the government. And there's a lot of like really easy ways to get funding, and it's through a couple of different phases. So definitely something to look into. Army Futures Command is amazing, and I think I'll talk more about it later. So kind of how all of this got started, MCC, Microelectronics and Computer Technology Corporation, started in Austin back in the mid-'80s. And there are a couple of really cool people who are involved in that. Obviously, Michael Dell is right in our backyard. What we've seen from these companies all starting here is, if you haven't heard the term, you will, the Dellionaire effect. And there's a guy with MCC named George Kosmitsky. I have it in my deck, but I can't remember it. And these people are basically like the OGs of the Austin tech community. And out of these big companies, they spun out lots of people who made a lot of money when those companies made a lot of money. And they looked for ways to invest in the startup community. And that's how things like Capital Factory got started, or companies like HomeAway, where their founders, are part of that community. Bizarre Voice is another big Austin tech company. Indeed is another big Austin tech company. All of these people trace their roots back to these like original organizations. There's a funny story about the "I help people get jobs" T-shirt. If you've ever seen that as their slogan, Josh Baer, our CEO, actually had as his first slogan for Capital Factory, "I help people quit jobs." And he has this T-shirt that actually Rami, who's one of the founders of Indeed, actually made for Josh. Josh can tell the story way better than I can, but ultimately, I didn't realize that the "I help people get jobs" was a slogan for Indeed. And I saw a guy who is now one of my best friends, and I thought he was making fun of our CEO. But it turns out it was kind of the other way around. So one of our biggest success stories that we love to highlight is WP Engine. They were in, I think, our first accelerator cohort, and they just had an acquisition event about a year and a half ago for like $350 million. Bumble is in our backyard, and I know that we do a lot of really cool stuff with them. They sponsor a lot of our events, which I get really excited about. Kendra Scott is launching a women focused accelerator coming up pretty soon. I know that we've been talking with them and working with them on that. And so at Capital Factory, what you can expect is that every day there is a bunch of investors here. And I know Central Texas Angel Network is on our 5th floor. There's always somebody coming in from outside of Texas to find out about companies that they can invest in here. Lately, we've had a lot of Fortune 500 companies and executives from those companies coming in. That's a lot of what my team does as well. We have this thing called the Innovation Council, which is all geared towards Fortune 500s and their key leaders and getting them plugged into the startup scene here. State and federal government officials. I've been surprised by the organizations that want to be connected to the startup community. I never thought that I would be excited to take a meeting with the IRS, but it turns out they're actually interested in what startups are doing here, as well as the FBI, because all of these like government entities, they don't know what innovation looks like, and they have no idea how to access innovative ideas, and so they're coming to us more and more to find out how they can get plugged in. And then we definitely have folks coming in from other countries. Right now we have a group of entrepreneurs from Europe through a program called YTILI, and I don't know what YTILI stands for, but they're here, and there's always a delegation coming from a different country. I've worked a lot in the education space, and so we've also got groups from student entrepreneurs and student entrepreneurship programs, and then of course people with a lot of brass on their shoulders coming in for the Army. Our connections to UT. Josh Baer, our CEO, is an adjunct professor in the Longhorn Startup program over at UT, and then we also work really closely with Macomb School of Business and MSTC, Masters of Science, Technology, Commercialization. We also have really great partnerships with other universities like St. Edward's, which is a smaller liberal arts school down in South Austin, and then on various occasions we also work with Texas State University and Texas A&M and a handful of others. Some of the folks, faces, and people to know. Mitch Jacobson is, I can't remember what his role is, but he's Austin Technology Incubator and Blackstone Launchpad over at UT. Melly Price is one of our directors here, and she is with Dell Med and the Health CoLab. And then Jan Ryan, another one of our directors, is always around and is doing really cool things in the design space. Texas Venture Labs is a UT program that we also work with periodically, and they're really fun and great. I already talked about Austin Startup Week. Make sure you mark your calendars for March. We're working with a bunch of really great partners this year for South by, and we are a South by official venue, so we do the startup crawl just like we're doing at the end of September. We do the startup crawl as the kickoff event for Interactive Week at South by Southwest. It's a lot of fun, and it's just even bigger and better every year. So definitely check that out. Founders and mentors get access to our VIP lounge, and that's a great way to meet people. And you can go to the VIP lounge for both the fall crawl and also for the South by crawl. And there's actually a VIP lounge all week during South by with like catered breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then an open bar all day. So lots of really fun things to do, and great programs as well. Many of the events and programs that happen here are South by official. We work with South by, we have a great relationship with them. And so if you are interested in doing South by official programming, you can talk to me and I can help you get plugged in. There's also lots of unofficial things happening at South by. So I always recommend, I would go to do the unofficial stuff for the first year until you kind of like figure it out before you go spend $1,500 on a badge. But the really cool stuff happens in places like Capital Factory. You know, there's always like a secret event going on here or there, so you just kind of have to keep your ear to the ground and figure out like what are the cool things to get plugged into. But obviously go and do all the fun unofficial stuff as well. I'm not gonna play that. Talked a little bit about that. That's General Murray. He is the 4-star who is in charge of that command. It is actually a really big deal for the Army. This is like the biggest restructuring of the Army in like 40 years. And they have, their express goal is to find startups to work with. So highly recommend you look into that. All right, so if you want to find this online, you can go to that website. Oh, these are all the things. If you want to take a picture of that, this is all the things. So I said a lot, and I hope that I didn't say everything because I know that we've got more to talk about, and then a networking happy hour after that. So I'm going to go to the next slide so that you guys can fire away on your questions. I guess before we get to questions, if there is anything that I missed or anything that you would like to add to that. What if you were an entrepreneur coming to us from Italy, what would you want to know that I didn't already cover?
I'd want to know either where to start or where to focus, my first month, I guess. There's a lot that we shared, and Austin is such a great town for this. And there's literally 10 things you could choose every night, probably, Sunday through Sunday. So where do we start? Where do you go? I think, and can I talk about other places?
Yeah.
So because I would say follow for events, follow Capital Factory, get on their list. So you get their list, their event email every week. I get it every Monday, and then Galvanize in the Riveter, and Austin Inno, because they don't just share events that are at their locations. I guess Galvanize and Riveter do. But they share other things going on around the city, and then Austin Inno has a great list of events and news as well. But those are the 4 that I stick to, and then I think, and that's where I find about meetups too. But definitely, if you want to hang out here, strategic events, and then find the right meetup according to your industry, your interest, or whatever, and just focus your time there. For that first week or month, and then you can be more strategic to dive deeper.
Yep, no, okay.
Okay.
Where do y'all want to spend
Yeah,
time diving in?
What do y'all want to
Is
know?
there volunteering at Capital Factory?
Is it volunteering?
Actually, that's a really good question. No, but we always make exceptions for awesome. So if you have an interest in helping with like Austin Startup Week, I would say Austin Startup Week is probably a good example. We always look for track leads, people who want to help us find and identify the right programming and curate, sessions for things like Austin Startup Week. And so a track lead for that is basically a person who wants to spend the time. Like we always send out an all call, which we've already like set all the programming for Austin Startup Week. But that person would go in and basically look at like, well, I represent the design community, and so I'm going to curate a list of the best design tracks at Austin Startup Week. And then Startup Crawl is a huge event, and there's always like I can get you a T-shirt and a VIP wristband if you want to come and just be a fly on the wall and kind of help us monitor the event.
I'll say though, I started this by volunteering at a company that was here in Capital Factory. So that's how I got plugged in. So there were DivInc it was here for a long time, and so I started volunteering with them. And so being here, I started
Get that
talking to
network.
people and putting that network and finding out where I needed to be and who I needed to meet. And so that is one thing I want to say, because a lot of people say, well, you need to, get into a co-working space. And yes, you do, but you can't go to co-working space and just like work and put your head down and work. And I see a lot of people do that, and I'm like, that's a lot of money to be here. You can go work at home. You need to talk, and you need to get out of your seat and like talk to people and engage, and that's where you're gonna find the value. And I always like make sure that I talk to the staff in Capital or wherever I am, and develop relationships with them. And then tell them what your needs are, what you're looking for, because they talk to everybody. And so I've been given a lot of leads just through the staff those relationships that I've made. So that's how I started.
I would also add to that being a startup founder is kind of like a volunteer position for a while. So if you're looking for that kind of volunteer work,
That's very true.
So yes, there's lots of volunteers.
there was a really great Thrill List article a number of years ago, but it said that, in Austin, everybody has 3 jobs. There's the one that pays your bills and gets you your health insurance. There's the one that gets you free breakfast tacos, and then there's the one that just really fires you up and it's the thing you're passionate about. And like that could not be more true at Capital Factory. I know lots of people who do that. So, but yeah, I think I'd be happy to talk to you more about it.
What gets you free breakfast?
Asking the right questions. Everybody around Capital Factory, like the entrepreneurial spirit of Capital Factory and places like Capital Factory, all of those other incubators and accelerators, everybody wears a bunch of different hats. I have a camera and I will do headshots for anybody. And that usually gets me free breakfast tacos or coffee or something.
I need a new headshot. That's clearly old.
I would say I'm like too serious, so I might be.
Yeah, come and talk to me. I can definitely make that happen.
But I'd say for volunteering, I was going to look at if you really want to be connected with Capital Factory, look at the companies that are here and see how you can volunteer with them, kind of like Monica did. And so, especially during South by, they might need help like curating who's going to be here, who they should meet with, how do they schedule those meetings, doing that prospecting. Every startup needs help for that, because South by is such a big opportunity for us to make those connections, and people come from all over the world, and it is a lot of manual labor to put that together. So I bet you
Do you think that'll
offering
give me a ticket to South by?
no.
But there are lots of ways to do that.
Yes.
Seriously, like
Okay.
ways to get badges for South by just by
Yeah.
being in the right place.
Well, and you can sign up to volunteer for South by.
That's a good point.
You can do that too.
Backdoor through the Capital Factory, just
That's right. And actually, I think if you volunteer for South by Southwest EDU, which is in the week before, as like a tech person or an event
You
person,
get to-
I think that badge counts.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The
Yeah.
secrets.
Thank you.
South by Secrets.
One question is, you guys mentioned about there's a lot of articles about why you should come to Austin versus San Francisco. My question is for you personally, what are the main reasons that you would say you come here versus San Francisco or New York City or Chicago?
culture.
Yeah, culture for sure.
I mean,
Just
for startups.
for startups, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
This might not be apply to everybody, but so one thing would be when we're talking to potential investors like angel, VC, they will be honest and helpful and ruthless when they need to be, but with a collaborative, supportive mindset and pointing us in the right direction, or being I feel like maybe a little more honest of yes or no, versus when we've gone out and we've set up those meetings in the Bay, it's either like, well, it's just the attitude of, well, of course not, like, you're not a unicorn, like, why are we even talking right now, or you're never gonna make it, like, and I'm just like, okay, well, maybe we're not gonna make it here, and so I don't know whether maybe they're just making me feel better, or, but that difference is gonna be the difference in, well, for me, if somebody tells me I can't do something, that's more motivation to do it, but not everybody's like that. So there's that. There's also just, I guess I feel like opportunity, it's like I can build the right thing, and I can iterate on it, and I don't have to sleep in my car to do it. I can have a family and do it, and I can have a healthy, lifestyle instead of, could be in my car or next to somebody else's car, because I can't afford a car.
For me, it's like I said before, the collaboration. The collaboration is what I think differentiates us, because people really do want to help you, and I think that, not that they don't want to help you in other cities, but I think that it's just more just pronounced in Austin. So it just seems like this is the right place to be right now.
I also know, so I worked for Hack Reactor, which is a coding bootcamp, and I remember when I was doing hiring and recruiting for them and working with companies to recruit our grads, we had a campus in San Francisco as well, and those grads all wanted to come here because even though it's just basic supply and demand, and in San Francisco, that's where like Google, Facebook, all these big companies, all of their developers are still in Silicon Valley, as opposed to here where like it's all like the medium and like soon to be big tech companies that have all their developers here. So the cost to hire a developer, like right out of our program in San Francisco, they were, the ones that were able to find jobs, they got jobs for like $120,000 to $140,000 a year, which is that salary here. Like you would have to be like a senior software engineer to get that, and our average starting salary here was in like the $80,000 to $90,000 range. But 80 to 90K here is actually way better. It goes a lot further than 120K gets you in Silicon Valley. So I think that those are the kind of like economics that a lot of startups are looking at, and they're like, I can hire amazing, talented people. UT's right there, and I don't have to break the bank to do it. I think consequently the valuations in Silicon Valley are much higher. And there's actually like a really great blog post, I can't remember who wrote it, who actually like went out and basically like A/B tested valuations in Silicon Valley as opposed to in places like Austin and other cities that are not like the major tech hubs, and like their valuations were just wildly different. And so Austin is kind of like still an underserved market, and I just think there's much more opportunity here. And Indeed actually has like a really good index on Austin comparatively to the other cities, so I would definitely check that out. What other burning questions do y'all have?
Love to have. It's a kind of a scattered question. I apologize. I first heard or got introduced to Texas 2 years ago when I volunteered in Hurricane Harvey. And there's a lot of difference in what I'm experiencing now as a co-founder of a startup, as opposed to running the operation back then. And both of you talked about opportunities and collaboration, which is one of the reasons why I decided to come here and sort of try it out. We got accepted to an equity-free accelerator called Tarnum. Yeah, and it's pretty cool. But we're at a point of we finished developing our product. We have the patent. We have everything we need to start selling. We made our first sale. And we're looking for a bunch of different things. And most of the people that I meet around here, they take notes of what I tell them, and they're like, you should meet this guy in Boulder. And question is maybe a lot of those things that you mentioned are, maybe a lot of them are relevant to coding and software and hardware companies or social enterprises. It's not as developed here as it is in other places, such as Boulder, for instance. That's the question, basically.
I'm sorry, the question.
I mean, are those opportunities more oriented towards software companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think Austin definitely has more of a software lean to it, and if you go to Houston, it's much more like oil and gas, medical, like hardware based, and Dallas is whatever Dallas is, like retail tech and real estate.
Figure it out.
Telecom.
Telecom, yeah.
Big telecom quarter in North Dallas, kind of got killed a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's still up
So yeah, I mean, I think Austin, even though it's interesting though, because arguably the biggest company to come out of Austin is a hardware company with Dell, but we are a lot, that is kind of where, Austin, I think its superpower is in being a hub for, software development. So But I think to what you're describing though is not surprising to me. It is totally, I think, in the nature of a lot of Austinites to just be like, yeah, let me introduce you to that person, or hey, you should go talk to those people.
They're not around. They're not here.
They're
And
in
you don't, I don't, do you
Colorado.
feel like you, so, maybe not you, but so I agree that we, like, being a part of Divinc and having to help our alumni, at a certain point, they, like, their next step is they need those connections outside of Texas, depending on the industry or what they're building. And so, but by being here, it's like you said, we can make those connections, we can build that network, and just by nature of how things work these days, you don't have to be physically in that same place. And so, like, being at Tarmac and where they are, there's somebody there that is an owner of businesses but is also a developer for this, like, really fast growing startup in the Bay Area, but he chooses to be in Austin, you know. And then when we connect our alumni who are in Dallas and Houston and Austin, it's super easy to make those connections because of our network here.
Yeah.
So it depends if you really need to, you know, physically be by those people, or if you can start building those relationships virtually and then meeting them. The other thing is like places like Techstars, where you, depending on what program you make the most sense for and try to get into, if you get in, then you like go to that one, and they're in different locations.
But I think that also, like, the demographics of this room illustrate why people in Austin are likely to introduce you to somebody who doesn't live in Austin. Like, how many of you are born and raised in Austin? You know, like, I wasn't born and raised here, so I still have a really great network actually in Denver when I was, I was a teacher there. And so I think that is also, it speaks both to the transplant nature of the people who live in Austin, and then also kind of the spirit of Austin, which is very collaborative, and like we want to help each other. And I don't think that is always true in other places. But I think that's one of like the hallmarks of Austin, and that's, you know, to the question earlier, like, why am I here and not in San Francisco? Like, I actually really like the people here. When I moved to Austin, before I moved to Austin, I just fell in love with the culture, and I fell in love with kind of like the particular like brand of entrepreneurship that we promote here in Austin.
What is that brand?
What is it?
Yeah. Your word.
I don't know. I mean, I would just say it's everything that we've described. It's supportive. It's you know, people here are just, there's no ego, or there's a lot less ego.
Yeah, there's definitely ego.
Working with startups, like, there's always going to be that element, but people are creative. I mean, the mantra of keep Austin weird is all but forgotten at this point, but I think that still lives on in like the spirit of a lot of the people who are here. And like, you know, my quick story on this is that I have a friend who is a recent college grad who taught himself to code, but he's got a degree in something else, but like that doesn't really matter. And so he literally was like, I don't know how to find a job. Like, I don't know who I'm supposed to know here. And so I was like, just come down to Capital Factory. And he came down at lunch, and I was like, I'll introduce you like 4 or 5 people. And seriously, he came in, we walked around, I was giving him a tour, and I was like, you should meet that person. And like within like a minute, they were like, you should go to the VR meetup tonight. And then they're like exchanging business cards, which I know is super antiquated, but they did that. And like that, and then that person was like, oh, you know who you should talk to if you really like video games? You should talk to this guy, Booz Allen Hamilton, who, you know, he used to like make video games. And so within like the span of 30 minutes, this guy's got like 4 or 5 connections, and like he didn't know anybody before. And I'm sure he'll get scooped up by somebody because he's a self-taught amazing programmer. And that to me is very Austin, and
Yes.
I just don't know where else that happens.
Right.
Yeah, we moved from this location to another location, and I'll be working in my office on the east side, and it's 4 o'clock, and I'm packing up to go home, and then somebody shows up. It's like, hey, I was at the Riveter, and they said I can't leave, and I'm from the Bay Area, and I can't leave Austin until I come to Divinc. Or I was asking about this at Capital Factory, and they said I need to come talk to Divinc. And so, you know, sending people from one kind of accelerator entrepreneurship hub to others, because we know each other's, you know, focus or specialties, so we can help match. So that's at the kind of organizational level.
What other questions do y'all have?
I'm just curious, what are some of the lessons learned? So there's a lot of amazing things, and I hear all of those things, but what have you learned that you see mistakes that others have made, or that you might have made that we could learn from?
can you drill down a little bit in that? Like, do you mean as a startup founder, as somebody seeking investment? Like what?
Yes.
That's a big question.
Okay.
That's a big question.
I have an answer for it. You go ahead.
I was glad you brought that up because I think back to this gentleman's question of understanding the landscape of where you are. So if you do recognize what is the interest and what people really get excited about or what they really know in this area, then I know how to navigate it better. And so I think I could have learned that a lot faster and saved time and savings that I had, that I was using to live on, to know, instead of expecting to get, a lot of interest or, a marketplace. And so, okay, what do people think about marketplaces here and who likes them, who doesn't, and things like that. I think, I don't know if that's, for me, that's a lesson learned of how I could have moved faster and smarter. The other
Was
one.
that by, I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
Okay.
By
By figuring out what the specialty or interest for where you are. So in Austin,
The landscape.
the landscape.
Yeah.
For Austin, we are heavily software focused. That doesn't mean there's not other things. So, but if I know we're heavily software and I have hardware, where are those niches to plug myself into?
Mm-hmm.
Here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like a fair amount of like, yes, so to know the landscape is to know who all the players are, who are the individuals, the people who like, are the heartbeat of those organizations.
Yeah.
Austin is still a small town.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but like, even though we're, well over 1 million people at this point, there are still just like a handful of people. Like, whenever somebody comes to me and they say, I have a consumer packaged good startup, a CPG startup, I immediately think, SKU, exactly. Like when somebody comes to me and they're like, oh, design thinking, something like around design. Normally the first person that comes to mind is who? Ruben Cantu. And then, like, oh, I need somebody to facilitate this thing, Douglas Ferguson. Like, it's a very small community.
Yeah,
And like, I think that's really important. Like the more quickly you can learn how that landscape works, that just is super helpful and will get you up to speed. And the other thing is, in recognition of that, like, don't burn any bridges ever.
Yes.
Like it is too small of a town. We don't have enough bridges for you to burn bridges.
That is so true.
So
everybody knows everybody here.
Yeah.
everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
and like if you work with one person, that how you work with them is going to carry over, and like other people are going to find out about that for better or for worse. And then the last thing I will say is, if you are the founder of a startup, my cautionary tale to you is to make sure that you nail your product market fit. I feel like that is such an often overlooked. I feel like it's happening less and less now, that I find somebody with like a really cool startup that I'm like, but no one wants to pay for that. Like no one's gonna buy that. But that was like an early issue in Austin, was like people coming up with these like spectacular ideas with like the most well-designed, well-developed website, and they have no customers, and they're never gonna have customers. And like, as an outsider to the intricacies of building a startup, I remember just being like, come on, you idiots, like nail the product market fit, and then you'll at least have something to work on. So those are at least some of my words of
You
wisdom.
had mentioned investment as well. Was that part of that, or that last part, or was the lessons learned around the investment community?
I think it's the lessons learned around the investment community is knowing when to raise and who to ask and how. I think recognizing the reality is that like you're not going to meet with an investor and get them to write you a check on the spot, like that. Maybe in the autobiography that you write, you'll talk about how that happened, but like the reality is it takes a really long time. And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, like if you meet the right people and you play your cards right, like the people in the community, the mentors in the community, they will go to bat for you and help connect you to the right people at the right time. So I think timing is everything. Recognize that like you're not going to do all your fundraising in Austin, but it's a relatively cheap flight to Silicon Valley and to New York and Boston and those other places. Yes.
How can Capital Factory help with recruiting? You talked a little bit about it.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is there's a really great startup on the 5th floor called Talent Robot. and they are awesome. We've hired a couple of people from them. In fact, our VP of events and programming, we source through Talent Robot. I think that's a big way. We have a job fair once every like 6 months. We try and make all of our pricing for those kinds of things to like sponsor a table or a booth, a table, make it really inexpensive for startups. So I think for the job fairs, it's like $50 to get a table, and it's just first come, first served. For Startup Crawl, I highly, highly recommend getting a table at Startup Crawl. And I think it's for startups, it's like $300 for a small table and $500 for a larger table. We just try and make the economics of it like really favorable for startups. And then we charge the corporates a bunch of money.
Are there any ties with UT through that or anything like that?
It's interesting that you asked that because I literally just had a conversation with MSTC, and we're going to advertise some intern positions through them. You know, I know if you talk to the right people there who are in charge of like career development and career services, I'm sure they would be more than happy to help their grads go and find, you know, gainful employment as soon as as quickly as they can.
And also during Austin Startup Week, UT has the intro to the startup scene at UT with the students. So startups go and have a table there and meet with the students. And so with all their programs, MSTC and the Venture Labs and the one that Josh is involved in, I forget.
Texas Longhorn.
Startup, like all of those get really plugged in this direction too with Capital Factory. So yeah, meeting the right people and just saying, who do I send my job description to?
I would say for MSTC, Mandy Reyes is the woman who runs that program. And then for McComb's School of Business and the Kelleher School of Business, Ashley Jennings.
She actually moved. She's now has a new role.
Oh, does she?
Yep, she got a new role. Good role. And so I would go to Lewis. I'd probably reach out to Lewis.
I don't think I know Lewis.
Her boss.
Okay, cool.
But I'm sure Ashley, you can
And
still
still
reach out to
direct.
Ashley, and Ashley will still point him in the right direction because she just got a new role.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, I guess what would be, each of your individual recommendations for, like, if you work for an early stage company who's secured their seed round of funding and who's just kind of in a growth period to kind of just grow community and meet people around. So, for example, our business has a headquarters in another state, but we're looking to grow a presence here, and we kind of have like a dispersed remote workforce. So, what would be your recommendation to kind of get plugged in with other young companies or just trying to build a community with other early stage software companies?
But what is your goal though? What's your goal?
So the goal is just honestly to just kind of grow in the community and potentially build
Like
an
brand
office down
awareness,
here.
just getting.
Yeah, so brand awareness, and then also potentially hiring and building out an office, and just really just networking and meeting people in the area.
Offer help, offer your services, offer, you know, kind of like you do when you network instead of just going and seeing what you can get from other people. I don't know what your company is, but I imagine if you got that seed round, you have a lot of talented people, and even if they're remote, you know, we have people remote that have startups a little farther along that mentor for our startups because they're super early, and for our startup founders, like this one was super helpful, and he told me exactly what to do because he's just a little farther ahead. So that was, and then like that's their go-to company now, right? So offering your services and your help to other companies around you. That's one
We
way.
did that, yeah.
I would also get involved with meetups. I mean, these meetups don't just happen in a vacuum. They need to know that, like, so for my meetup, I'm always looking for somebody who knows something cool about education that I don't. And so I think along the lines of what Brooke was saying, I think to offer up, like, what you've learned, you know, like go and speak on a topic that is something that you know more about than anybody else. That's always super valuable. And the way that I think you also said this really well, like don't just go and ask people for what you need help with, find out what you can help them with. And like that just resonates with this community so well. Like I've had people come and sponsor the EdTech Austin meetup, and like I always have this conversation with them. I'm like, don't go out there and tell us what you have to sell. Tell us something that we don't already know. And that just is like human to human 101. Like I don't want to buy the thing that you're selling me. I want to know something. I want to like take something away from this. And oh, by the way, if you happen to be selling something, and now I built trust with you because you taught me about something really interesting. Like these speakers for my meetup, like I would tell them like, you're a software company that does this one really cool like dyslexia software, and the guy got up and talked about like how dyslexia works and why, you know, computer fonts are challenging for people with dyslexia, and it was just like super fascinating. And he's like, oh, and by the way, we solved this problem. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So like that perspective, and it's just like approaching it from a little bit of a different angle, I just think it really goes a long way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up question to this. I believe strongly in what you said, and I've seen how it's been really helpful in our disaster relief work. And I used to be, before I started my own company, which is no idea why I'm doing this to myself, but I used to be brought as an advisor or a mentor to other startups, from small businesses of 2 people to Google.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful when to get inside a network when you have somebody that offers like, here's what I can do, and I'm trying to do this here to sort of, there are a bunch of things I know nothing about, like software, but there are a bunch of things I know quite a lot about, and I would love to offer people, you know, if they need help with that. And one of the things I did, I'm going to be speaking on a panel in Austin Startup Week, in one of those panels.
Oh, nice.
But I want to know, so if you have this like, here's what I know how to do, if you need me, come up. It's like, where would you post that, or where would you like go and say, hey, I'm here, here's what I can do for you?
An accelerator.
Yeah,
So
so
knock on doors and say, hey, I'm here, just
yeah, I mean
I need
LinkedIn.
an
So
apartment.
right, any kind of prospecting, whether I'm prospecting for potential investors or
You might
for
have
potential
an
co-founders, yeah, you can, is doing that same thing. So what, you know, most accelerators have their dates listed. So what are their dates, and what look at their portfolio, what kind of companies go through here, can I offer them anything helpful? The other thing is companies themselves, right? Whenever we get funding or we get a grant, anytime we want any kind of money, all these people would email me, and some people, a lot of them were student interns wanting to work with a growing company. Others wanted to sell us stuff, of course, but that's just as another prospecting way to say like, hey, I see, congratulations on this. This is my expertise. You know, would love to offer a free consultation. I'm not, you know,
Right.
that's one way.
I mean, I also just like you know this already, I'm sure, but like, yeah, just be genuine and not spammy, and
Yes.
like, you know, we have like Capital Factory has a Slack group that's super cool, and it's like how I find out about like things that are going on and who are the right people to go to. There's a company at Capital Factory called, you asked about recruiting, there's another company called Let's Eat Grandma. They're awesome. They're such a cool company. They're basically like, they help you build your resume and like, you know, build your social media presence and all that stuff. And these guys, they're 2 brothers, and they just like came to me and they were like, oh, they do a podcast. That's where I was going with this.
Okay.
They do a podcast about like helping people build their resumes, and obviously that's like free for people to find out about. But then when people learn about it, they're like, oh my god, like I want to use the service. And they always offer. They're like, hey, if anybody at Capital Factory wants help proofreading, you know, a proposal that you're sending out or whatever, we're here. We'll help you. And they sent me a recommendation to hire somebody, and I hired the guy, and he's awesome. You know, like I trust these guys now, and they're here, and they're always just like super friendly, and that's just super cool. Like I love that mentality. So yeah, I would just find like the folds and margins where you can get hands on and just help people.
Then there's so much networking that happens too, and the same thing for you guys is, so whenever you're at those meetups and you're, you know, again, being genuine and being ready to share, this is what I'm passionate about, what I love to do, let me know if I can ever help you. That's it. You know, not to be spammy or creepy, I guess, and then just walk away, let them come to you. But there's so many times that I'm like, yes. If the companies in my program can't utilize it, I'm like, I need that training, I'll take it.
Oh, the other thing, this is kind of related, but get your elevator pitch down. Like literally,
For yourself,
if you can tell me in 30 seconds what you do, that's fantastic. I think that's always, really helpful.
Mhm.
I think there's,
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry if you already covered this, but at what point in time should you consider joining an accelerator, and how mature should your company be in order to consider for an accelerator program?
It depends on the accelerator. It depends on the accelerator. So we're early stage, so we're not incubator, so we're not, you have to have an actual, it has to be further than an idea.
Right.
But we're pre-seed, so we're early stage. Your accelerator is a little further along,
it just depends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I guess because I said some of the companies that I see going to Capital Factory, they could have also been a part of Divvy, and some of them are. Some of them do both.
Mhm.
A lot of them do both because there's such great benefit of both programs. But I don't know, how do y'all describe? Because we have wording that we try to describe, and so you could find that wording, and also talking to other people who've been through it. Like, where were you when you applied? But y'all have certain wording.
Yeah, so we're basically like post friends and family round, post revenue, so you have a product you're already selling, and usually pre-seed, and we want to help you build out your seed round and help you find all the investors for your seed round. And then, our strategy is we don't write like huge checks, but we write a lot of them. And so we want to like help you build your seed round, and then we will be the last seat on that seed round, and then we reserve the right to invest in every subsequent round. So we win when you win. That's kind of our strategy. Beyond that, like, you could talk to somebody on our venture team, and they would be able to tell you. I like the way that I describe it is like, we never say no to a company. We'll just say either yes or not right now. And so if you work with like the venture associate team, and I'm sure every accelerator has a similar version of that, just make sure that you keep them in the loop of like any developments, like, hey, we just got this big customer, and like, or hey, we got this other, friends and family investment, or whatever that might be. But yeah, we try to hit that sweet spot of like, you're not too far advanced that like, we don't think we can help you grow and scale, but you're still, you have enough traction that like, if we were to help you get an investor, that could get you elevated to the next level.
And then I'll add to that real quick is know when you can take advantage of that program. So if the right people in your company can't take advantage of all that you're going to have access to, maybe that's not the right time, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because if they want to help me, raise a seed round, and I'm not going to be able to, focus on pitching and doing that networking or everything that needs to happen, then I'm not going to be able to take advantage of all the help they're going to try to give me.
And sorry, quick follow-on question. What might be a good resource to see what accelerators are available locally?
I think, Accelerator Reverse Pitch Competition, Tuesday night, the 24th. Austin Startup Week. I think it's Tuesday the 24th.
At the Riveter.
Is that out there?
It's at the Riveter.
Yeah.
Oh, it is? I thought it was at Galvanize.
Oh, no, it's at Galvanize. Sorry, I was
Galvanize.
thinking of Elisa.
Oh, okay.
So yes, it's
It's
at
at Galvanize, and so it's accelerator reverse pitch. So all of this accelerators in Austin will be pitching to you. So all of you should go because it's for you. Good question.
Galvanize, yes.
Thinking about the startups that are looking to either establish or expand a footprint here, and given all the opportunity and activity in Austin, space has been a challenge. I know the list of companies who have wanted to come to Austin is much, much longer than the companies that have relocated to Austin. Do y'all have any channels in place or any direction to kind of send people to try and find space to grow?
I know of one, a company called Elevate Growth Partners, and they literally, do you know those guys?
Around the mark?
Yes,
Yeah.
all right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Let me write that
I was just
down.
wondering if y'all had anything specific, any channels that you pointed folks toward.
I don't know them. So is that like physical location? Is it hiring? Is it everything?
No, they're like they're like realtors basically, and they
Okay.
just have a bunch of spaces everywhere.
Oh.
But they also invest in a lot of the companies that they place. But like, I would say from Capital Factory's perspective, like, if you've looked here, you probably realize that like the cost per square foot for our office spaces are way higher than WeWork and any of the other places around town. But that's because we're not just a place to like, you know, cram people into an office and like, you know, bang things out. You're there because you want to meet the community, you want to be involved in all the things that happen. That's not the best fit for everybody, and in fact, a lot of companies will start here and then they like take advantage of that community and they grow, and then they leave and go find space elsewhere. The go find space elsewhere part of that equation, like I don't actually know where that happens. I imagine that, you know, it's more expensive downtown, and so they're starting to expand out. I know of a lot of companies, like I know of one company that they bought like I can't remember how they did this, but they bought like 3 condos all next to each other and then just knocked down all the walls. Like people are getting really creative about how they do that. A lot of East Side warehouses are now being converted. Yeah.
All the ones that are
And
like.
How
there's
big
more
is your
going
company, or how big are you trying to grow to?
Oh, no, I'm just curious I wear a lot of different hats, but I help a lot of people to find space. And that's a conversation that has been coming up a lot recently, is there are so many people and the space is getting tight.
Yeah.
Price per square foot
But there
for
is a lot
Class
of
A
new
downtown is the same as New York City.
There's a lot of new development that's also being, like I know UT is gonna do a big,
There's big, yeah.
I just had a meeting and UT is gonna be building a new innovation center over here. There's gonna be a lot of new spaces there. So, I mean, there's a lot of development that's also happening too.
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a,
Swank space downtown, I mean, that's expensive, but it's only, you know, it's $3 and $4 a foot a month here now. Not that uncommon, but as soon as you head further out, you know, if you get as far as Round Rock or other places which have Vidals up there, you know, it's only $1 a foot.
Yeah.
This is not quite like the Bay Area where you gotta drive, you know, you're still within commute, you're still probably where all your employees are gonna live.
yeah.
And there's, you know, there's green cow pastures out by Palmer and.
Oh, that's
the
why
Apple
Apple's campus is
and-
going, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Drive out Ronald Reagan out there by the campus and keep going. It's
It's
just,
still open.
there's, you know, plenty of land. This is Texas. They haven't stopped making it.
I do like my 10-minute commute to downtown though, so I don't know. It's a great question, and I think the other thing to know is whatever you end up doing, just make sure you like the side of the river that you live on, because don't cross the
Yeah,
river.
don't cross the river. I would be interested to share, there's a new company coming out of Dallas, super early stage startup, it's called Church Space, and she's building a marketplace to connect businesses and startups with empty church space, because they sit empty all week.
It's a thing.
And so she's I think in Florida, she's in multiple states already, and so I don't know, try it, maybe I'll tell her your people are looking. So Church Space, I think it's .org, but it's not a nonprofit, I'm not sure. Church Space, like thechurchspace.org or something like that. But I thought that was brilliant. I'm like, yeah, there's like so much, I mean, we should talk to, there's one right across the street from the Episcopal place.
Yeah, St. David's.
Yeah, there's 2.
And St. Mary's.
So there's space.
On the question front, or what we were talking about earlier about the give and receive, when it comes to acquiring beta testers for B2B, what would you guys suggest?
Everybody wants B2B beta testers. Let me think about that for a second. So having a corporate background, I'm trying to think of how people have gotten in with this before. There are employee-led groups within corporations that I think are good in. So, we have like robotic engineering volunteer groups, and then we have women leadership groups, and they were constantly bringing in either speakers or new companies to just either to speak or to like try this thing, and so I think there's focus groups, and so that's where I saw a lot of people coming in, either to get people to try things, to get feedback, to get volunteers for their business. That's one option.
I don't know the answer to that. And then we try to, when we speak to corporations and look for partnerships, that's one of the things we talk about is like, is there a way that we could partner with you so that your employees could actually be beta testers for some of our companies? That's something that, because we
We're
know it's a
working
need.
on, yeah.
We know it's a need. And so we're looking for ways to facilitate that for our companies too.
Well, this isn't like a super scalable way to get beta testers, but breakfast tacos. There's a company here called Chocolate Milk and Donuts. They're a super cool like AR, VR company, and they were developing this AR solution for, I want to say like Rawlings, like some glove company, like a batting glove or a golf glove, and they needed people's hands. They needed like to test it on the camera on different size hands. And so they offered chocolate milk and donuts in the kitchen on the 16th floor, and people just came up all day long and like beta, not beta tested, but they were literally just like data points for them. So that's one way to do it.
What is your product? I'm sorry, what is your?
It's a franchise marketing platform.
Okay.
Yeah, but and then market research is pretty expensive, so I would try and find some creative solution around that. But I think it would be a like let me help you first perspective, and then people might be more willing to help you. Meetup groups are probably another good way to get the word out for those kinds of things.
There's the 1 million cups. If y'all know 1 million cups, there's one in Austin, but there's one in Round Rock, and which might be easier to get into. But at least that one, when we did it, there was a lot of companies that were there, and they all want to help. So I don't know, that could be something of like, here's the pitch, here's what I'm doing, and you always always want to ask, and there you're not pitching for money. And so my ask is, I need enterprise beta customers or something, and they might be able to.
Speaking of breakfast tacos, I haven't asked this question yet, but for the newcomers to town, where is your favorite breakfast taco, and what are your favorite breakfast tacos?
I love the Jess special at Taco Deli.
That is a good
one.
suggestion. Try the doña sauce.
Oh yeah.
It's very spicy, but it's
Just
delicious.
drink it.
I drink the doña
Yes,
sauce.
it's so good.
I always tell people that, and
they think you're crazy.
They do, but it's so good.
So good.
I don't want to eat more breakfast tacos. I just want more doña sauce. What about you?
I'm a breakfast taco snob because I come from San Antonio, so like we do breakfast tacos. And then when I moved to Austin 20 years ago, I was like, you guys don't do breakfast tacos. But all right, El Palenque, which is actually they have one I think in is it New Braunfels or San Marcos?
Yeah, just here.
Anything from El Palenque. I will drive extra just to go there.
Things that are close by. There's a really cool like Jewish deli called Bitterman's, and they actually got into the breakfast taco game.
Really?
Yep. They also have really good bagels, but they have like some pretty good like pastrami breakfast tacos.
Oh, interesting. That's what Monica's like. Oh.
That's what I'm talking about.
I know that we're not supposed to start happy hour until 6, so if you want to hang out and ask questions, we can do that, or we can break early and go to the kitchen and grab something to drink and network. I never want to stand between people and free alcohol. So. Any other questions before we send you on your way? Yes.
You touched on this a little bit, but what's the main difference between the Capital Factory community and like a WeWork community, as well as the facilities that you could get from either one?
Do you want to hear my perspective, or do you want to hear their perspective?
Well, let me tell mine real quick, because I
Please
worked
do.
at both. So from my perspective, so we were Creator Award winners, so we felt like we were part of their like incubator, accelerator, but it's not, right? We worked out of WeWork, and it was amazing, and we had support, but it was like our working space, and we could, network and everything. It was beautiful, it was awesome. And then working in Capital Factory, they're setting up mentor office hours, and if like he just did, he has somebody coming through. It's like it's a corporation. It's like, oh, what are you working on? Okay, you need to talk to this startup, and this is what they're working on. This is why you need to talk to them. So, the higher ups that we weren't like bringing people to us. They weren't setting up mentor office hours. They weren't setting up events to help us. If we had questions, we could email them, but we just had office space. And so that was one thing that I saw.
Yeah, it's much more proactive here, and so that I think that you kind of alluded to that earlier too. I love WeWork. I do love WeWork, but it is different. It is different. So you just have access, much more access here to, and then they're just more proactive and trying to help. That's
And then I will tell you my perspective on that prior to joining Capital Factory. So I worked, I was a teacher, and I was teaching down in Del Valley, which is out by the airport. And so I was just like a poor teacher who was really interested in this idea of ed tech. And so I was like, I'm gonna start the ed tech Austin meetup and get people to come do it, and it'll be a lot of fun. And I reached out to a number of different places. One was Tech Ranch Austin, which was an accelerator. I think they still have.
They brought it back, I think.
They did, yes. Kevin Coyne, really nice guy, and you know, a savvy entrepreneur who was trying to do exactly what Capital Factory was doing at that time. And I reached out to them and said, I think this sounds cool. I have this this newly formed meetup group, and I'd love to host it there. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Let me connect you with my salesperson. And I talked to her, and she said, yeah, it's $75 an hour. And I was like, I'm a poor teacher. Like, I don't have $75. Like, that's not going to happen. And she was like, well, you know, that's what the space is. I can discount it, you know, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, that's not going to work. So I went over to VUCA, which is now Impact Hub, and that's a really cool space. And if you haven't been there, it's awesome. You mentioned like social good and socially focused places. Impact Hub is great for that. But they are also.
You write down what you're saying, so can you repeat what they're called?
VUCA Impact Hub.
How do you spell that? What's the word?
VUKA.
Oh,
Do they still
okay.
call it?
Is it still?
No,
I don't
it's
know.
just Impact, just
Hub.
Impact
Oh.
Hub. And they have one on the
information is
south side, and they have one up north on Lamar.
It used to be VUCA and Gather, but I guess it's all just Impact Hub.
Hub.
So I went to them, and they were basically like, you know, oh yeah, we'd love to have you here, and it's $50 an hour. And I was like, oh, making progress. And I had the craziest thing happen because I sent an email to Josh Bayer at capitalfactory.com, and I didn't know Josh from anybody, and he literally sent me an email at the same time. But I was like, hey, I'm checking out spaces like Capital Factory, and he sent me an email and was like, we want you to host your meetup here. And I was just like, that's super weird. How did he know? And so I responded to the email, and like, I was like, got on a call with him, and I was like, and I was actually mostly stalling so that we were ready for Rebecca. But I'll finish my story. And so I was like, hey, I want to host my meetup. Where can I do it? Or can I do it at your space? And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. And I was like, cool, how much is it? And he was like, what do you mean, how much is it? Just come to your event here. And I was like, oh, really? It's free. So from that point, like, I was just like, yeah, this is my community. And like, we quickly grew to like, I think we're now at like 2,500 members. We've been doing a meetup here every month for the last 7 years. Like, we're like hooked into here. I'm not at Tech Ranch. And in fact, I haven't been back to Tech Ranch in probably 5 years. And it's been so long since I've been to Impact Hub that they've changed the name. And you know, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with WeWork. Like, they're a great organization. They're like
The evaluation.
I'm sorry?
The evaluation.
That is something that's wrong with them. But like, who gets an office there? They get an office because frankly, it's less expensive than Capital Factory, but they don't offer the same like community and the same like experience. And that for me has always been the difference maker. You know, and that, you know, like, I think Div Inc. and the Center for Social Entrepreneurship, Center for Social Innovation out on the east side is also another really great community. And so we support all of them, and we want people to like go and find the one that, you know, works out for them. So yeah. You're welcome. All right. Well, you guys paid $12.71, so let's go get $12.
If that wasn't worth it.
Happy hour here